My 30th birthday, I celebrated by going to a nightclub with my friends. At midnight, I walked out of the nightclub and I ran 30 miles that night. You know, it almost killed me.
Next guest holds the record for the longest uninterrupted run in history. Please say hello to Dean Karnazes.
I've run 135 miles across Death Valley in the middle of summer, which is the hottest place on Earth. And I've run a marathon to the South Pole, which is the coldest place on Earth. It was minus 45 degrees.
Most people, you know, they live in a house, they go out to their car, they drive to the office. They don't ever wander in nature. And they're also removed from pain. I mean, they fear pain, and they're always trying to take a medication or a pill to get rid of pain. It's created so much loneliness amongst our population because we don't know how to move beyond this place where we're stuck. I've chosen a path that is non-traditional. I'll never forget, I bought those baby strollers and I put all my luggage and my laptop in there and just started pushing it. And I started running, you know, heading back to California from New York and just looking for the sunset. I found parks to sleep in at night. You know, some people saw me and they recognized me and I slept on their couch. I've learned to embrace the struggle, that if you run from the struggle, it'll crush you. I'm no longer a young man. I'm still somehow making a living as an athlete. I'm 60 years old and I've got a 100-mile race, you know, in a couple weeks I'm training for.
How do you do it? I thought about how I would start this interview, and I think the best way, just to give you the reason why I'm doing this in the first place, and then we can get started with some of the questions that I have. You see, so the name of this podcast is called Traces of Victory. And the reason is because I'm 29, and I'm still trying to figure out my own path in life, you know, my own personal road. And I still don't know, to be honest, exactly what I want to be doing in the next 2 years, 3 years. And I know that many of my listeners find themselves in the same boat. They are unsure about the path ahead. I thought that it would be interesting to kind of interview other people, that inspirational people from all walks of life, to understand how they found their roads in life. And so I think it would be good to start from something that it's kind of close to my heart, because in June I'll be turning 30 years old. and it's like, wow, whew, I'm turning 30 years old, and it's interesting. I'm excited, but at the same time I'm a little bit scared because I honestly don't know where I'm headed in life. And so I want to talk about that moment at that bar when you were drinking with your friends, and then you decided, you know what, I don't like where I'm headed in life, and I'm just going to go out and I'm going to run 30 miles. And I want to know, from that specific point, how did you make that shift? Like, how did you go from that point to then becoming this person?
Well, I decided I was going to write a book, and that was kind of the first step.
Mhm.
I didn't think I would sell very many copies, but I thought I want to try the challenge of writing a book, because
Mhm.
writing a book is difficult. It's like running an ultramarathon. It is very time consuming. It requires a lot of focus and dedication. And I wrote a book, and the book was a good seller. It was called Ultramarathon, man. It was my first book. And I realized that there was power in the storytelling of someone trying to triumph beyond even running. It was just the human triumph of daring, of doing something that was courageous and
Mhm.
unusual and bold. And I thought, you can make a living doing this somehow.
Mhm.
I don't know how, but I think there's enough
Mhm.
interest, and it inspires people in enough way that there's some way you can turn this into your life.
Interesting. But then what happened between that moment when you said, okay, I'm going to change direction in life? Because I guess it wasn't an overnight success. Like, you were still working your corporate job, and then you decided that I want to become this person. What was the transition? How did you make it happen? Was it you were still working, and at the same time you were trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to make a living doing what I love?
That's exactly right. So I was starting to do kind of side jobs within running industry. So I started working with a footwear company designing trail shoes This was when trail running was just becoming a new thing. In the old days, right when a time around the time you were born, most people only ran on the roads, like the Rome Marathon or some of the other marathons. And I was very much into trail hiking. I grew up in California, so I started helping the North Face design trail running shoes. And from there, the relationship grew, and the community grew, and I started finding other avenues to to pay the bills. I think what you're alluding to is anyone can do what they love all day, but how do you keep the lights on? How do you make a living? So I I started getting sponsors, and it there was enough revenue coming in from my athletic pursuits that I could work a little bit less. And eventually I just transitioned completely out of my job and became a full-time athlete.
Hmm. And when was it the first time that you're like, okay, wow, this ultra thing, I, it's just unbelievable. Like how these people do it. When did it happen? Was it like a specific moment that you met somebody and you're like, these people can run 100 miles? Like, how is it possible? And I want to do the same. Was there a specific moment?
Well, I on my 30th birthday, when you turn 30, you'll probably, I don't know how you celebrate, but I celebrated by going to a pub, a nightclub with my friends. And at midnight, I told them I was going to leave, and they said, "Well, where are you going?" It's your 30th birthday, and I said, I'm gonna run 30 miles to celebrate." Which is about 50 kilometer, about 49 kilometer, and they said, "You're crazy. You're not a runner." But I remember when I was a kid, I used to love to run, and how much it made me feel
Hmm.
alive.
Yeah.
So I walked out of the nightclub and I ran 30 miles that night, and it almost killed me. It was the most difficult thing I had ever done. And then I started becoming a runner after that point. So I got some running shoes, and I started jogging every day.
Mhm.
And I was jogging home one day, and I thought I was a pretty fit guy. I was in pretty good shape, and these two guys passed me, and
Wow.
these guys were almost like another species of human. I mean, they were so fit and so trim, and I thought, I want to talk to these guys to see what are they doing? How did they get this way? But they just disappeared over the top of this mountain. I thought I'll never see them again. But when I got to the top of the mountain, they were up there doing push-ups.
Wow.
So yeah, and so I tried to talk to them. They weren't very talkative, but I said, are you training for something? And they said, it's a race, yes. And
Mhm.
I said, well, how far is this race? And they said, well, it's 50 miles, so about nearly 80 kilometers. And I said, at once, like, how can a human run 50 miles? And they said, yeah, there's I said, are there campgrounds or hotels along the way? And they said, no, the starting gun goes off and you just start running, and you're done when you cross the finish line. And they kind of said, if you cross the finish line, implying that I wasn't fit enough to
Yeah.
cross the finish line. So I learned about this race, and I signed up, went to this race, and somehow finished the 50-mile race. And it was by far the most difficult thing I'd ever done in my whole life. And I was in the medical tent at the finish. As from doing your marathon, they give you a Mylar blanket and you kind of wrapped up in it. And
Yes.
I was sitting there, completely dehydrated. And I saw these same two guys, and they were high fiving each other, congratulating each other, saying they qualified.
Mhm.
And I thought, what did you qualify for? The insane asylum? And they said, no, we qualified for the Western States 100-mile endurance run.
Mhm.
And I looked at them. I said, hold it. Did you say 100 miles? Like twice as far as we just ran? And they said, yes, it's twice as far. And I said, well, you know, what do you do at night? Do you stop at night? And they said, no, you just put on a headlamp
Mhm.
and you run at night. And I said, how do you eat? And they say, you eat while you run. And they said, you cross a river, along the way. And I thought, that sounds completely impossible. A human cannot run 100
Yeah.
miles. And I thought, I have to try this, because they said to me, the last thing they said as they were leaving is, you know what, you qualified as well. And when they said that to me, I knew that if I didn't do it for the rest of my life, I'd always wonder, could I have done it?
Hmm.
So I signed up for the 100-mile race, and that was, back in right around the time you were born. That was 1993.
Interesting. And I wonder, has it ever happened to you that after you leaving your job, um, you encountered self-doubt, thinking, this is hard. How am I going to make it? I personally, like I have many dreams, things that I want to accomplish. For example, one of the things is I love this podcast, although it's small, but I love talking to people. I love listening to other people's stories and trying to understand, okay, how can I become a better person? But at the same time, sometimes I encounter self-doubt. Am I good enough? Can I make it? Can I make a living doing this? So has it ever happened that you encountered self-doubt? And if you did, how do you deal with that?
I mean, I encounter self-doubt every day.
Every day.
I mean, I've chosen a path that is non-traditional.
Hmm.
So, I mean, nowadays it's more common to do things like what you're doing, to have a side job, either like a, gig economy is kind of big now.
Hmm.
You can drive for Uber, or, you can do a lot of different things. You can start a podcast.
Hmm.
When I broke away from the corporate world, that was more unusual. This is in an era where most people work for the same company their whole life,
Hmm.
and I don't want to do that. So, I mean, I'm no longer a young man. I'm still somehow making a living as an athlete, which is
Yeah, it's
crazy. I mean, you
unbelievable.
hear about,
It's
you
incredible.
know, tennis players, Nadal, Federer. I
Hmm.
mean, those guys are in their, early to mid 30s, and they're saying, "Wow, it's amazing they've lasted this long."
Mm.
I'm 60 years old, and I've got a 100-mile race, in a couple weeks I'm training for.
Wow.
So, every day I've got to figure out how am I gonna, how am I gonna have an income tomorrow? And I it's a struggle, and I've learned to embrace the struggle. That if you run from the struggle, it'll crush you. So to me, I really enjoy the full spectrum of human emotions. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm doing things now that I've never done in my entire life. I just wrote a movie script,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to get this in front of people because I've never written a script, and I'm brand new at this, so I'm approaching it with fresh eyes, and I'm getting a lot of no's, a lot of rejections, and it's demoralizing. But then again, I kind of uh, I lean into it, and I say, embrace the suffering, embrace this horrible situation, that seems hopeless, and really uh, engage in these feelings of desperation. And I know all of us feel these feelings,
Hmm.
and a lot of us think that we don't like these feelings. We don't want them anymore. We want to be a success in everything we do.
Hmm.
I certainly have had some successes, and I tend to not celebrate my successes as much as my failures.
Why?
I think success doesn't bring as much reward as failure. I think success is the conclusion of a journey, and I think that the magic is in the journey itself. So, we all love a Hollywood story, and a good story, the hero is beaten down at a point and somehow must, rise from the ashes. And I think there's just something about that, the struggle. And I don't know. I think it's the nature of mankind. I mean, I do a lot of reading, and
Hmm.
you read some of the earliest literature, Homer, and you read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and it's all about struggle and longing and pain. I mean, the main character of the Odyssey, Odysseus, the translation of his name is man of pain. So I think something inside us seeks that struggle more than comfort.
And on that note, how do you keep yourself grounded? Because I myself think, okay, journey before destination. And I think, okay, the journey is way more important than the destination. But sometimes my mind just wanders. And it wanders in places where I sometimes negative thoughts come into my mind. Although I feel like intellectually I know that okay, the journey is more important than the destination, but at the same time, part of my head still wonders on the future ahead. Because you were saying that every single day you wake up and you think, okay, how can I earn money? How can I make a living? How do you think about those thoughts, but at the same time remove those thoughts so that you can focus on what you do best?
I think a couple things. One is to sometimes don't think about anything. Just
Mm.
be in the moment,
Mhm.
in the here and now. We hear a lot these days about mindfulness, and that's not an easy place to get to. But if you can, for an hour or so, and especially when I run, I meditate, and
Mhm.
I don't. When I say meditate, I just I try not to think of anything except for my next footstep.
Mhm.
So I don't think about how much further I've got to go in my run. I
Mhm.
don't think about past memories. I don't think about the future. I just think about taking my next step and looking around and engaging in the environment and nature and being in the here and now. And to me, that is kind of refreshing, and
Mhm.
it kind of reequates you with being human because we live in a world that's constructed
Mhm.
uh, in a very unnatural sort of way. And sometimes if you're so engaged in that, it's dehumanizing.
Mhm.
And I think that, especially here in America, most of the people have absolutely no relationship with nature.
Mhm.
I mean, that's where we came from. And I think most people, they live in a house, they go out to their car, they drive to the office, they go shopping in a supermarket. They don't ever wander in nature. And
Mhm.
to me, that is the most grounding thing ever is to just go for a 1 or 2 hour run off on a trail and don't think about anything.
Mhm.
Just be a human wandering through nature, and it's almost primordial.
Mhm.
But I would say try that and uh, try to. It takes a lot of discipline because our minds are so active. Even right now, as we're having this interview, we're talking, but you're thinking about a million different things. If you can quiet your mind
Mhm.
and just be in the present here and now, a lot of times you emerge from that kind of refreshed and rejuvenated.
Do you think that does that feeling of um, people living a life that is not grounded with nature, does that bring loneliness in your life? Because sometimes it brings loneliness to my life when I try to talk with people and explain things that I want to do, but I can't relate to these people, you know. Uh, and I just wonder if I'm just. I guess I'm not the only one who like feels lonely in terms of finding my own tribe. Does that feeling of disconnection with other people bring a level of loneliness in your life?
Yes, it does, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That's very perceptive, especially for someone your age. I mean, I watch the news, I interact with people throughout the day, and I feel like we don't really connect. There's very few
Yeah.
people that I really connect with because our realities are so much different.
Hmm.
And it's funny. I think I'm 100% Greek,
Yeah, I know.
and for some reason when I go to Greece, I just feel like I connect with the people on a different level. And the Greek culture, I mean, the culture's been around for 3,000 years, so it's much more sophisticated and refined than
Hmm.
here in America, where our culture's maybe 300 years old at the oldest.
Hmm.
But there's something about the Greeks that they're never beyond just saying, let's have a shot of ouzo and Greek dance. Like, just screw everything. Let's just be humans and have some fun for a while. And you don't encounter that mentality here in the U.S. that often. I think people are very combative and they're very removed from nature, and uh, and they're also removed from pain. I mean, they fear pain, and they're always trying to take
Escape.
a medication or a pill to get rid of pain. Where you and I know that when you're running, you're going to encounter pain, and pain is part of living, and it's an emotion you should experience. So I think that you and I could probably go on a 3 or 4 hour run and very much relate to each other. But there's not a lot of people out there that would join us. They
Yeah.
would think we're crazy. Yeah.
And um, why do you think is the case that is so different between, for example, people living in Greece and then Americans?
I just think that culturally, uh, they've the Greeks throughout history have experienced all of these things we're discussing, and they've debated it. I mean, from the time of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, they looked at how best to live your life. So they've been mulling over this question, and I think that in the modern age, in a lot of industrialized countries, we just thought production, business, economy was the staple of happiness, and I think it's created so much loneliness amongst our population because we don't know how to move beyond this place where we're stuck. That's why I think turning back to ancient history is a way to look at how people have navigated these same waters successfully.
Interesting. And what do you think are, um, what advices would you give somebody my age, somebody who is looking for the roads in life, somebody who maybe is a little bit obese, somebody maybe who doesn't have a good relation with nature, and they're a little bit lost in life? What would you say to them?
A practical tool that I tell people is to write just write a script, a paragraph or two about your perfect life.
Mhm.
So just free form. It's just, nothing too formal. You can type it, you can write it just with a pencil or a pen, but just say tomorrow, just dream tomorrow morning if I woke up and my life was exactly as I wanted it, what would it look like? Where would I live? What kind of car would I drive, or would I even have a car?
Mhm.
Would I be married? Would I have kids? What would I be doing? Would I be windsurfing every day? Would I be running? Would I be, writing? Would I be making a movie? Would I be acting in a movie?
Mhm.
Just write down exactly what your perfect life would be. And then you at least have a framework of what your perfect life looks like. Because if you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there.
Mhm.
But once you have this idea of this is kind of what my life would look like if it was perfect,
Mhm.
you can start moving in that direction. And I think that people are sometimes surprised. I mean, I asked my son to do this,
Mhm.
and he said,
What do
"Oh,
you
Dad,
say?
I'll be in Hawaii drinking a pina colada, or having a margarita. That's my perfect life." And he thought about it more, and he thought, that's kind of an empty life. Like, in my perfect, I'd be in the Peace Corps, serving an underprivileged country. I'd be in Turkey or
Mhm.
Syria right now, helping with earthquake relief. So, write down exactly what would bring you the most internal fulfillment, and I think that's a very good exercise for people
Mhm.
because, like you said, you're not quite sure where you want to go
Mhm.
moving forward. But if you could wake up tomorrow and have the exact life you wanted, what would your life look like?
You talked about this concept in the podcast with Louis House, and my perfect life would be, to be honest, be somewhere at the beach where it's warm, and being able to wake up in the morning, my beautiful wife, and I had all the little details, like the color of the room, the temperature of the water when I take the shower, and it would be being able to interview some incredible people, learn from them, and then spend time outdoor, windsurfing, running, and then come home and work on things that are meaningful to me. For example, having a small podcast and be able to interview people and sit down with people and uh, and have meaningful conversation with people and build a small business that it's meaningful to me. And so this would be my perfect life. Now, my next question is, how do you go from now having the vision of what I think I want to actually making it happen? From your personal experience of me wanting to become this incredible man, this ultra runner who is able to do incredible things, how do you How do you make the leap?
Well, I mean, I think you're already moving in that direction. We're we're interviewing on your
Yes.
podcast, and I mean, I think that you're growing an audience on your podcast because uh, you're a good interviewer, and you're deep, and you ask some penetrating questions, and you have some very spirited and honest conversations. So you're already moving in that direction.
Hmm.
I think that you'll have great success with your podcast. I think that the more guests you have on that have notoriety, the more guests you'll attract that are similar, and you'll find an audience. I mean, I think there is an audience for the kind of discussion we're having,
Hmm.
and so I applaud you on that. I mean, I think that because you want to do this, you'll be very good at noticing, okay, this sort of conversation really works well. I enjoy it, and it brings in more listeners. You'll find advertisers that you align with. I think that you'll look at other potential revenue streams through doing what you're doing. So I think you're taking the appropriate steps. I think you're moving in that direction. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
No, my friend Rich Roll, who's
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
you might know Rich. I
Absolutely.
mean, I remember the first time, yeah, I was like one of his first guests, and he just,
Wow.
he didn't think he had no vision for where his podcast was going. He just liked to talk to people,
Hmm.
and look what he's become. So I can see you becoming the same thing.
And is it the same mindset that you had when you wanted to transition into becoming an ultramarathon runner?
I just say it all starts with a dream.
Hmm.
So, like when I ran the 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days, the book you read about, that you
Yes.
talked about, that was just a dream. Like I thought it would be an incredible adventure to see all of America and run a marathon in every state. And, how I was going to pay for this, I had no idea. But the pieces, I just started assembling the pieces,
Yeah.
and eventually it all came together.
I read about this technique that you had, which actually, interesting enough, it helped me a lot. The technique of baby steps. So instead of thinking about the whole 50 marathons in 50 states, just think about the next step or the next bush. And it truly helped me a lot, to be honest, especially when I was training and I just even running. And sometimes I just don't feel like running. It's
Mm.
cloudy. I hate running when it's cloudy and when it's raining. I just hate that. But sometimes you gotta do it. And I think this technique of just baby steps, take baby steps, just focus on the next bush, or just focus on the next tree. Just get there. It truly helped me a lot. And one thing that I also wanted to talk about, because I think it's important. And although I'm 29, I see life sometimes through the eyes of other people, especially, for example, through my grandmother's eyes. She's 90 years old. So I don't know how long she has to live, maybe 5 more years, 10 more years. I hope longer. Maybe she's going to become a centenarian. Who knows? But I just wonder how do you approach the concept of death, the concept of like a search for meaning? How do you approach that concept? How do you think about that in your life?
These are big questions
Yes,
uh, that mankind has pondered forever.
I know.
And I mean, we all search, and I think that we all try to find meaning in what we're doing, but in a sense there is no meaning. I mean, let's face it. In 100 years, this conversation probably won't mean much to anyone, and
Yes,
in 1,000 years, it certainly will not. In a million years, will it
it won't matter.
and in 500 million years, there'll be no one left on Earth, if not sooner, because we'll be so close to the sun that it'll be too hot to live on this planet. So where do you find meaning in that? I mean, we're just a speck of dust in a vast empty universe. And I think that to me, it's the little things, it's the little enjoyments in life that bring the most meaning.
Hmm.
So it's hugging your grandma. I mean, she's 90 years old. She's your grandma. You've probably seen a lot of her, but just to hug her, probably means so much to her. And it's just those little sort of celebratory moments of life that give it meaning. Because if you think about it too much, no matter who you are, no matter how important you are, it comes to an end. I mean, even Achilles in the Iliad said, he'd rather be a nobody than a famous war hero in the underworld among the dead. So
Wow.
he realized that you need to celebrate life. And even though he was, supposedly this great hero in real life, it didn't do much for him. He should have lived his life a little more fully.
Interesting. And how do you appreciate the little things? How do you do it? Because it makes me think of I was reading your book yesterday. I was just rereading, and I came across this interesting passage that I found it super interesting. And you tell the story when you finished the 50 marathons in 50 states, and you were in New York, and you were in this hotel room, and your family left, and you woke up, and you felt this sensation of emptiness inside of you, and you decide to run from New York to San Francisco. And I read it. I'm like, wait, did I just read that right? So you decide to go from New York to San Francisco, and then you go, and then you reach, I think it was
Mississippi, yeah, yeah.
Mississippi,
Mm.
and then you, all of a sudden, you feel complete, as if the journey of these 50 marathons, 50 states was complete, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna go home. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, the 50 marathons became somewhat of a commercial project. It was grand and it was spectacular, but it was also a lot of news interviews and a lot of celebration around it. And I kind of got caught up in it, and I thought, you love running for the purity and the simplicity and the isolation of
Mhm.
running, and I wanted some of that back. I felt like maybe that was a missing component of the 50 marathons. So I'll never forget. I bought one of those baby strollers, and I put all my luggage and my laptop in there and just started pushing it. And I started running, heading back to California from New York. And this is before, we had smartphone, we didn't have GPS devices and those sort of things. So I was just pushing this baby stroller with all my clothes in there, and just looking for the sunset, because the sun always sets in the west. So if you run toward the sunset, you're heading back to California.
Mhm.
And that's just crazy to be doing that, because it's 3,000 miles.
It's insane.
It's 5,600 kilometers across the country. And I found parks to sleep in at night. Some people saw me and they recognized me, and I slept on their couch, a couple nights, and it was amazing.
And then you got to Mississippi, and you felt, okay, it's complete. I'm going home. And I think that was appreciating the little things when you got home and you accomplished this amazing feat. How did you how did you then switch your mind to, okay, let's just appreciate time with my wife, time with my kids, just a simple run?
Yeah, it was something else. It was something else. I mean, I crossed the Mississippi River, which is halfway across. That's like the dividing point across the U.S. So it's kind of made it halfway back, and it just, something inside me felt like it was complete, as you
Mhm.
said. And so I just I ran to the airport. I said, do you have a flight going to San Francisco? And the flight attendant said yes, and I gave her my credit card. And half an hour later, after running for, you know, halfway across America, all of a sudden I'm on a plane flying home. And
Interesting.
it was wonderful. I flew home to my family. It was the holidays here in the United States, so it's something we call Thanksgiving,
Yes.
and it just felt like I should be with my family for Thanksgiving,
Hmm.
and it just
Wonderful.
it was the perfect conclusion to the story. It just all seemed to fall into place.
Wonderful. And probably that time with your family meant a lot to you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe more than accomplishing the goal. Maybe even more than accomplishing the finishing line of the 50 marathons. I don't know. But I want to explore this statement that I found it fascinating. And the statement is, we all live in a prison with door wide open. What does it mean?
Yeah, I think that he's alluding to the fact that we are our own worst enemy. That
Hmm.
um, we put limitations on ourselves because we believe we can't do things.
Mhm.
So we live in prison and we never try. So I think the Greeks have a saying, "O Ptolemon Nike," which means "Who dares wins." And I
Who
think that's a
dares?
great statement. I think just by daring and stepping out of that prison, you're a winner, even if you fail.
Mhm.
And I think I think that it's not failure that stops people. In my experience, it's the fear of failure.
Mhm.
So I think that statement is to put aside your fear and open the cage and get out.
Interesting. I think a lot of people also feel a lot of anxiety when it comes to maybe just completing the first 5K, or maybe just accomplish that goal or going on that direction. Do you experience anxiety when you stand on the line and you have your next 100-mile run? Do you feel anxiety or not anymore?
Yeah, no, I feel anxiety. I mean, even at the start of a marathon, I feel anxiety, and I think that's good. I think once I stop feeling the anxiety, then I won't appreciate the experience as much. Because I mean, even with a marathon, there's no certainty, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you never know if you're going to make it. I think that's the beauty of the marathon, especially the ultra marathon,
Mhm.
is no matter how fit you are, no matter what, there's no guarantees. So you're taking a step into the unknown. And the thing that I've also always noticed is once the gun goes off and you cross the starting line, somehow the anxiety just goes away, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It all disappears because you're all of a sudden you're in the fight. So you're in the here and now, like you're making it happen versus worrying about how's it going to happen.
Mhm.
So whenever I'm experiencing anxiety, it's always to the buildup of something that you're going to start. And once you get started, that anxiety just disappears.
Yeah. The trick is to get started and just get going.
The trick is is having the courage to sign up.
To sign up,
I
yeah.
think yeah. I mean, you did the Rome Marathon, and a lot of your peers, your friends, probably thought you were crazy, and they thought maybe that's something that
Yeah.
they could never do, and you might have thought it was something you could never do, and once you do it, you prove to yourself that you're better than you think you are, and you can
Mhm.
go further than you thought you could.
But then, how do you get the courage, for example? You're writing this incredible script, this movie script, and you're getting rejected. It's a little bit different than running a race. Because in that case, you fear, the gun goes off, you start, and then it's true. The fear disappears because you move. In that case, it's a little bit less dynamic because you're writing the script, but you're getting rejected. So how do you deal with that in that particular scenario?
It's tough. It is tough, and again, I think that embracing the failure
Mhm.
is when you get rejection, saying, "Wow, this really hurts. This stings, and it's horrible." And how low do you feel on the emotional spectrum?
Mhm.
Is this the lowest you've ever been? Because anyone who dares is going to get rejected. I mean,
Mhm.
we all think that the people that we admire are perfect, and you might have thought I was perfect, and I'll tell you what, I have just as many rejection letters as acceptance letters. So I think most people that reach a high level of achievement are they're gritty, they're tough, and they can kind of deflect a lot of rejection
Mhm.
or process a lot of rejection and keep moving forward.
Interesting. And I think running sometimes also helps you to run from things. Are you running from things or towards things?
I think I do both as well. And let's face it, I mean, running is a great form of escapism.
Yes, it is.
When things are really bad, I don't know, for some reason I can go for a run, and when I come back home 2 hours later, it doesn't seem as bad anymore.
Something that I find it fascinating is how incredible you are at your age. And I want to be like you when I'm 60 years old, to be honest. How do you maintain this longevity throughout the years? How do you do it?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I don't think there's just one thing. I think that I approach my life through the lens of being the best animal that I can be,
Mhm.
and I apply that in everything I do, from diet to sleep to exercise to cross training. A couple of things that a couple of practices I hold is that I never do something that you're doing right now,
I'm
and that
sitting.
is sitting. You could probably tell I'm on my feet.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, during the interview, I'm on my feet. I've been bouncing around. So I encourage you and anyone else who's listening or watching this interview to a couple days a week, if you can, if you're not driving anywhere or flying anywhere, from the moment you get out of bed until the moment you go back to bed at night, don't sit down. Try
Mhm.
this for a day and see how much better you feel.
Hmm.
Also, I'm constantly working out through the course of the day. So even before this interview, I did, a set of push-ups, pull-ups, burpees, and so forth. So I'm doing these little micro bursts of cross training, and I think that helps. The other thing is that I don't eat anything in a bag, anything that's
Mhm.
refined or processed. So I like to tell people I can't, pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with my hands. I won't eat it. So try to avoid man-made foods. I mean, there's a saying, if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't.
You don't own a car, isn't it? You don't drive. You don't drive,
I don't
but
drive.
you know what's
No.
interesting? It's my next question. Because one of the difficulties that I'm having is designing my own environment and finding a place that I love. For example, I was born in Turin. I lived in Rome and I lived in different places. And I don't personally like being in Turin or in Italy. I prefer more like in an international environment. And it's hard for me to, and many people that listen, I've been having these conversations with so many people, to find a place that you love. So, what are some of your advices on finding a place that you love, or just designing your environment? Because from what you're describing, like you designed your environment specifically to your specific case. So you have a stand-up desk, you don't drive, you run, and I think designing your environment, I think it's a big part of your success.
I would say make that a priority.
Yeah.
People sometimes say to me, wow, that's incredible. You can't drive. I really, you don't drive. You don't own a car. I really admire you. Like I could never do that. It's so impractical. Yeah, it is. You're right. It is very impractical not having a car
Mhm.
because I have to design my whole life around the fact that I don't have a car. So, if I want to go get some food, I know I got to run there, and it's going to take, at least 30 minutes to get to the closest place I can, grab some food. If I want to go to the bank to deposit checks, which, I got to run there.
Mhm.
So it is inconvenient, but it's the way I want to structure my life. So I put up with it, and I design my life around the fact that I don't have a car, and anyone can do that.
Yes.
It's just they have to be willing to put up with some inconveniences and change their life around. Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing is that you want to be inspired by the place you live,
Yeah.
and when you go to this place you live, you want it to emotionally charge you up,
Hmm.
and pretty much when you visit a place it makes you feel. You either feel very energetic or you feel depressed, like I don't feel
Yeah.
natural. I don't like it here, and you've already witnessed this and experienced this yourself. So I think that find that place that gives you the most energy. If that's Rome, Rome's a very dynamic city. uh, you know Certainly Athens to me is I mean, I live in San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, people say San Francisco is a great city, and it is. It's it is awe-inspiring. It's beautiful, but I don't know. When I go to Athens, it's just a whole nother level of
Have you ever thought of moving to Greece?
I've thought about it quite a bit. No, it's I have a daughter, Alexandria, who's a few years younger than you,
Mhm.
and we're very, very close. And she said to me, "Dad, I'll be so sad if you move to Greece." And I said to her, Alexandria, it's easy to get to Greece these days. I mean,
Yeah.
there's direct flights, but she lives not far from here, and she just says, "I'd like being able just to come over to your house, at spur of the moment." And
Mhm.
so that's the main reason is my daughter
Interesting.
just would be so sad. But I do spend about 5 months of the year in Greece now.
Something that I thought about that I wanted to ask you during this interview is how do you deal with feeling of loss? You know, because we all know that we're not here forever, and especially the people that we love. And I want to be prepared when things go wrong. And I don't think I'm so strong. What are some of the strategies that you use that can help you to anticipate that feeling that you may have?
It's not easy. I don't think it's easy for anyone. And I'm not trained on, I'm not a priest. No one's ever told me how to counsel someone to deal with loss or grief. But for me, the person that's gone, they live on within you.
Mhm.
So they're now part of you, and you'll be reminded of them all the time. And it at first it's haunting. I mean, you'll when your grandmother is no longer with us, you'll see notes she wrote to you when you're a little boy. You'll see, some of her pottery, if she's made pottery, or some of the dishes that she used to love to eat from, or some of the foods she loved, and you'll think of your grandmother, and keep her in your heart. Keep these people in your heart, and celebrate those moments. I mean, I lost my sister, and
Mhm.
I still have scraps of paper, 40 years later, where she had written little notes to me, and they used to make me cry, and now they just fill my heart with joy because I think of her, and so she lives on within me. And the other more practical thing to remember is that the person that's gone, they're not suffering anymore. They don't even know, they don't know they're gone. They're
Mhm.
gone. So it's not like they're suffering. They've just have experienced what all of us will experience, being human, and that's their passing. So uh, that to me is some solace, is that it's not like they're in a torture chamber. Um,
Yeah.
they're no longer with us.
I thought about the last question that I would ask you, and I thought about this. So imagine that it's Dean at 29 years old, and you come home in your room, and under your bed, you find a box. And inside the box, there's a letter. And inside the letter, there is written, "Hi, you don't know me, but these are some of the things that can help you uh, throughout your life." And it's you at 6 years old writing that letter. What are some of the things that you will write in that letter to your 29 old self, but the without giving the answer to life?
I would say to follow your heart. So to listen to your heart more than your head. Follow your passions. I would say that treat others the way you want to be treated. I would say that remember, life is a journey and not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Uh, and I would say to dance more often.
Dance more often.
Just dance more often.
Does it mean having more fun throughout your life?
Yeah, I mean, people have said to me, do you regret spending so much time windsurfing? Because like you, I love to windsurf. I was a professional windsurfer, and I mean, those are 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my life where that's all I did is travel around and windsurf. I could have been, my job or my education or whatever.
Wow.
I could have been earning more money. And people say, don't you regret this decision you
Hmm.
made? The problem is, if you're doing the things I just said, then you're not enjoying windsurfing around the world. So yeah, I don't have regrets. I mean, I've traveled the world windsurfing, and
When did that happen? When you were in college or uh, later in life?
no, when I was in university, that's
University.
how I paid for university
It's
is
insane.
through windsurfing. So I used to go to Maui all the time. You know the places I traveled to:
Yeah,
Maui, Hood River in Oregon, all over California. So and Mexico and
interesting.
the Caribbean. So I traveled all over windsurfing. Yeah.
Lastly, know thyself. What does it mean to you?
To me, I mean, that's again, this is a Greek concept from the oracle
Yeah.
at Delphi. He said, "Know thyself," and how the thing is that's a very benign statement. Know thyself. How do you get to know thyself? Well, you don't get to know thyself by living in your comfort zone all the
Mhm.
time, right? You get to know thyself by daring and risking and moving outside of your comfort zone and trying new things and learning. So I encourage people to never stop exploring, to keep trying new things, and you learn more about yourself the more adversity you face.
Mhm. And on that note, something that made me think fear of comparison, comparing yourself to other people. Does that happen to you? That's a big problem in society. Also for me, sometimes I compare myself to other people that are more successful and I don't feel so good. Does it happen to you?
I think sure, it happens. I think it's a human emotion, actually, and I think that it's destructive. I think that comparing yourself to others, gossiping, putting others down, are the most destructive forces in the universe. So how do you move away from
Mhm.
that? Uh, it's not easy. I'll be honest. I mean, I think that for me, I now celebrate other successes, even people that I'm competitive with when they succeed, because I know it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come natural. That it's hard work. So I admire these people, and instead of being jealous of them, I admire their success.